Hi, this is Bob Costas, and you're listening to the ML Sports Platter.
The ML Sports Platter back with you all over the major platforms like Spotify, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer. Make sure you download, subscribe, leave feedback, and a 5-star review. Just find that Apple purple podcast button right there on your smartphone device. If you have an Apple phone, tap it, hit search, type in ML Sports Platter, hit subscribe, and you will get new and archived episodes of the ML Sports Platter with the likes of Bob Costas, Hall of Famers, Adrian Wojnarowski, and more. The ML Sports Platter is brought to you by Bryant and Stratton College, Axe Exotic Pets, our good friends over at Ken's Auto Detailing, and, of course, Matt Graham, your State Farm agent. Go ahead and visit SyracuseInsuranceAgent.com. That's SyracuseInsuranceAgent.com. Get a free rate quote today and find out about their rate drops as well. Matt Graham of State Farm, if you're in greater New York State or in the central New York area, like a good neighbor, State Farm and Matt Graham are there. Home, auto, life, bank, health, and business. Matt Graham of State Farm is a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor. Well, I just recently had Yankee great Ron Blomberg on to talk, of course, about his brand new book on Thurman Munson, The Captain and Me, and he co-authored it with one Dan Epstein. Let's talk with Dan right now, the terrific contributor to Flood Magazine, Stompbox Book, Rolling Stone. Dan Epstein on Twitter at Big Hair Plasgrass. That's at Big Hair Plasgras. A must follow on Twitter. BigHairPlasticGrass.com is the website. BigHairPlasticGrass.com. Dan Epstein, congratulations on the book with Ron Blomberg covering the Captain Thurman Munson. How are you? Welcome to the ML Sports Platter.
Thanks so much, Mike, and thanks for having me on.
Do you think Thurman Munson is a Hall of Famer?
I do. I mean, yes, his career ended, unfortunately, prematurely, but I think, you go back to the 1970s and you look at what he did, both as a player and as a leader of the Yankees in that decade. Rookie of the Year, most valuable player, all-star number of times, led the team to 3 straight American League pennants and 2 straight World Series championships, and worked with so many great pitchers and in so many cases made those pitchers better. I think, I grew up in the 70s, or at least, that was when I was first a baseball fan. And if you talk to anyone back then, Thurman was at the very least in the top 3 of any catcher conversation, and often in the top 2, with Johnny Bench being number 1. And I think, the other 2 guys, Carlton Fisk and Bench, are both in the Hall of Fame. I don't see what the Hall of Fame would stand to lose by including Thurman as well.
So you collaborated on this book, The Captain and Me, again, major bookstores, Amazon.com, online where books are sold, with Ron Blomberg. In following the game in the 70s, growing up, watching Munson, seeing him, his mannerisms, how he handled things on and off the field, and then, of course, being close to Ron, how do you think Blomberg and Munson were similar, and how do you think they're different?
Well, I think, the differences are most obvious, that they're, Ron was a country boy from Georgia. Thurman was a Midwestern boy from Ohio. Thurman was, had this sort of like tough shell about him, very kind of pugnacious. Ron was, and to this day is still like a, super upbeat, positive guy, always smiling, loves to talk to everybody. Thurman was not known to be the most sociable person, especially where reporters were concerned. But I think what was similar with them and what really bound them together was their absolute love of baseball, and the notion that, you go out there and you go out there to win, and you do whatever you can to help the team. And then on top of that was, I think, a shared sense of pride in wearing Yankee pinstripes and, kind of following in that grand historical tradition that is the New York Yankees franchise. I think but also I think, and Diana Munson gets into this in a bit. In her introduction for the book, is that Ron was such a positive and non-judgmental person that Thurman, who really felt all his life like he was constantly under the microscope and being judged and being criticized, that Thurman could hang out with Ron, and Ron completely looked up to Thurman both as a friend and a leader. Did not judge him, just kind of let him be who he was. And I think, Thurman needed somebody like that on the team, that he could just kind of let his hair down with. And, the two of them would go out together in New York City, and everybody loved talking to Ron, and Ron always had tables at the delis, and was always getting invites to come on down to the garment district and get suits and stuff, and he would bring Thurman with him. And I think, in those situations, Ron would be kind of the center of attention, and Thurman, I think, enjoyed that. He enjoyed hanging out with people in that kind of scenario where so much of the focus was on Ron, and he could just kick back and relax and talk to people, and he wasn't in a leadership role in that scenario, and I think he enjoyed that.
The Yankee brand is unbelievable. I mean, this team hasn't won a World Series since 2009. They haven't been there since 2009. Sometimes when the Yankees fail in the playoffs, it gets more headlines, and there's more craziness from the fan base. The interest goes up. There's more clicks. There's more listens. Ratings are through the roof because people are starving again for a World Series. Yankee fans, for the majority, can't accept no World Series for this long, for sure, but even for just a few years. But the Yankees' popularity is just so grand. The brand is so huge, and it leads me to this. Writing this book with Ron Blomberg, you're writing about Thurman Munson. And certainly no disrespect to Munson, no disrespect to Blomberg, but Munson isn't Berra, Munson isn't Mantle, Munson isn't Ruth or Gehrig or DiMaggio, and Ron Blomberg is a Yankee great, and he's the first designated hitter in the history of the game, but Ron Blomberg is certainly not in Monument Park either. Terrific player, but he's not in Monument Park. So isn't it unbelievable with these two who are way down the list of Yankee greats, right? You've got a number 1 book on Amazon, and that speaks to the Yankee brand, right, Dan?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, and this is something that I've found, in my career as an author and, writing books about baseball. It's like, if your book is about the Yankees, or even tangentially in some way about the Yankees, you have a much better chance of even getting a publisher interested in it, partially because all the major publishers are in New York, and partially because, Yankee fans will buy books about Yankee players, and you can't necessarily guarantee that with any of the other franchises.
Yeah.
But I mean, but that said, I mean, I think, no, Thurman wasn't Yogi, but at the same time, again, flashback to the 70s, like Thurman was, I don't think you would find any Yankee fan back then who was like, Thurman Munson, whatever. I mean, I think, it was pretty clear that Thurman was one of the great Yankees of that period, and and there's even there's the part in our book where Ron is kicking back in the clubhouse with and I'm sorry, it's early in the morning, I'm completely spacing on his name, but the Yankees clubhouse guy who was there for decades.
Oh, Pete Sheehy? Is it
Pete Sheehy?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So and he asked Pete, like, what do you think of Thurman? And Pete predicted that he was going to be another Bill Dickey, and so I mean there was a lot of, I mean, I think in his time Thurman was definitely seen as a potential Hall of Famer, and obviously no one saw the plane crash coming, but I think that the thought was that he would continue on in his career and probably play his whole career with the Yankees, despite all his threats to go to the Indians, and would eventually wind up in Cooperstown.
Yeah, Pete Sheehy, by the way, 58 years as a clubhouse manager, 21 World Series, and 29 pennants. So you talk about a guy who, went from the home runs of Babe Ruth to the MVP year of Don Mattingly and all the rest. Just what a unbelievable career. The stories that guy. Oh man, yeah, no doubt. Dan Epstein, our guest, of course. The book with Ron Blomberg, all over the major bookstores and online where books are sold. It's called The Captain and Me on Thurman Munson. Make sure you follow Dan on Twitter as well at Big Hair Plasgrass on Twitter, of course, and BigHairPlasticGrass.com, the website for some terrific writing as well. What do you hope people say about the book when they get done with it?
Well, I think mostly I hope that people will come away from it with a greater understanding of who Thurman was as a person, not just as a player, although that's certainly part of it. Because I think he was, even to me, who grew up as a Thurman Munson fan, I feel like I had a pretty one-dimensional image of who he was until I started working with Ron on this book. I also think that there's a real that there's a beautiful human story here in Thurman's friendship with Ron, and that's really that was one of the things that really attracted me to this project in the first place. That it's kind of a bang the drum slowly sort of thing where an odd couple of baseball players are brought together by being on the same team and going through ups and downs together, and really like the way that Thurman looked after Ron when Ron was literally on the DL for like 2.5 years, and just absolute, at what should have been the prime of his career, and it was absolutely soul destroying period for Ron, and the fact that the Thurman, who was the team captain, was helping lead the team to the pennant. Despite all kinds of distractions in the media and the clubhouse and fighting with Billy Martin and George Steinbrenner, that Thurman would take time out of every day to check in on Ron and kind of encourage him and keep him from losing hope. I think that's just such a beautiful thing, and I had no idea that's part of who Thurman was, and I think it's such a great. It's a great thing to learn about Thurman, but I think it's just such a great lesson for all of us to carry with us. That we all have friends and colleagues who are hurting, who are struggling, and going through things, and just how much it can mean to somebody if you just take some time out of your day and check in on them and make sure that they're hanging in there.
The Bronx Zoo Yankees. With Reggie and Thurman and Billy and the cast, a ton of great role players as well. Where do you put them on the list of Yankee, either dynasties, mini dynasties, single season teams, however you want to go about it? How far down are they from the top, Dan?
Well, for me, they're at number one. Not because not statistically or in terms of all time greatness, but I find this period of the Yankees more fascinating than any other period in Yankee history. Just the mix of characters, the mix of talents, the drama, obviously we've there have been several books that have explored this period, starting with Sparky Lyle's The Bronx Zoo and ladies and gentlemen, the Bronx is burning. So much great stuff has been written about this era, but I think that's because there's just this like endless well of fascinating stuff that went down in this period. I think obviously the Ruth Garrick years would be, I think anyone would have to put those at the top, and the Mantle Berry years number two. I think obviously the Yankees have had some great teams in the 21st century as well, but I would put the Bronx Zoo Yankees above those.
When you look at Thurman and his connection to the Yankee fans and the appreciation, of Munson. There is something about it with just the catcher position only. I mean, Yogi Berra, Munson, we know that Joe Torre was a catcher at one point, not for the Yankees, but obviously in his career. And managers end up being really good, catchers end up being really, really good managers because they see the field, they're kind of patrolling things out there, they're a general, so to speak. Do you think Thurman would have managed?
Probably not. I mean, I think he certainly had the baseball knowledge and skills to do so. I think he was a master at sort of sizing up the opposition, sizing up players on his own team, working with pitchers, figuring out what they could do in any given situation. I think he would have, he had the mind for it, but I don't think he would have had the patience for it. I think, the idea of Thurman, having a press conference after every game. Yep. I mean, this is a guy who, this is a guy who was throwing bottles at reporters in the clubhouse. Yeah. I really, and I think that the New York, I mean, if he had been a manager, it would have probably only been for the Yankees. I can't see him, going on to, have gone on to manage the Phillies or the Tigers or whoever. But, I feel like the New York press corps would have completely, who are tough enough as it is, would have made it even tougher on him because they would have enjoyed having him in the hot seat. And then all the, working under George Steinbrenner and all the all the meddling there, I think it would have driven Thurman absolutely insane. I mean, in the book, Ron says that he thinks that Thurman would have been happier as buying into a baseball team, like being part of a owners consortium and being involved that way. That way he could have kept his hand in the game, but at the same time, avoided all the unpleasant things that he hated about the day-to-day life of a baseball player.
Yeah, no doubt. The book is out. Couple more quick questions for Dan Epstein, co-authoring it with Ron Blomberg, the captain, and me on Thurman Munson. And you can go get it online where books are sold in major bookstores. Dan on Twitter at Big Hair Plastic Grass. And, of course, BigHairPlasticGrass.com for more of Dan Epstein's work. A must-follow on Twitter, a terrific writer for years. As you go through the years and write book after book after book after book, does it get easier? I would never call it easy. I think that in sports media, being an author and being a play-by-play guy are the two most difficult things, I think. But does it get easier with more reps, more books, more experience, more interviews, more everything?
Well, I don't know that easy is the right way to put it. I think it becomes easier to avoid certain mistakes. Certain parts of the process become more streamlined. Yeah. Maybe it's easier to kind of focus in on, to dial in what exactly you're trying to do. But, every book is a challenge in its own way. This is the first book that I've done with a co-author. This is the first book I've done where, somebody is basically telling me their life experience, and I'm, both trying to, make sure to stay true to their voice, but at the same time, make sure that, all the right info is in there. And, and with Ron, it was, that was challenging because, like a lot of players of his age, it's hard to remember exactly, what happened 45, 50 years ago. It's hard to remember at what point in the season you were hitting 386, and so my job was to go, Ron would tell me his stories, and then I would go back and, look through the newspaper archives and look at his stats and look at Thurman's stats and just figure out, okay, this is probably when the story actually happened, this year, not, 72, not 74, et cetera. And so, I mean, that was a lot of fun, but it was also challenging. And the way we kind of worked it out was that, I would, Ron, the format in the book is basically it's Ron talking, and then I kind of chime in every couple of pages to set a little context, or give a little statistical overview or things like that, because I thought that was a more honest way than trying to put all those statistics in Ron's mouth.
When did you first meet Ron and your relationship with him? When did that start, Dan?
I've never met Ron.
Really?
I've never. We've never been in the same place thanks to the pandemic. We started. We were introduced actually through Rob Wilson, who is now our agent, and Rob had been Ron's agent on his previous book, Designated Hebrew. And he knew that Ron was looking to write a book about his relationship with Thurman, and so Rob suggested that I would be a good co-writer, because I know that period of the Yankees and baseball in general really well. And so Ron and I had a phone conversation, hit it off immediately, and then we just, it became like I would call him every twice a week. I would record the phone calls. Sometimes he would have specific stories that he wanted to tell me. Sometimes I would be like, okay, well, tell me about catfish, and we would just find different ways to riff on it. And then, over time we had enough, really more than enough for a book. And so then it became about whittling it down. But, Ron and I still talk on the phone multiple times a week, but we've never actually been in the same place. I'm hoping that now that we're both vaccinated, we'll be able to do that soon.
I want to just ask you a couple of, general baseball questions about the game today, and I'll let you run, Dan, if that's okay.
Sure.
Do you think the game is in trouble? I mean, it's not. The product really isn't that great. I mean, teams struggle to hit over 200. It's walk, strikeout, home run. There's not a lot of action. The pace of play is brutal. Rob Manfred's creating. I mean, these rules are just absurd, especially the one in extra innings putting somebody on second base. I mean, it's like cartoon land here. Are you worried about the game? Do you love the game still?
Yeah, well, I mean, I love baseball and I love baseball history, but I can't even watch.
It's brutal, right?
What's become to it. I really think they should just make it all home run derby all the time and get it done with, because that's what it's heading for at this point. I think, I think that, I mean, pace of play is such a easily fixed issue.
Yes.
But instead of actually fixing it, they're adding all these other bells and whistles,
exactly right.
And it's absurd. It's T-ball rules. I find it so frustrating to see what it has become, and still a great. Still a great game. I still go to minor league games, and
they're trying to ruin those too, though.
But they are trying to ruin those, and there's and jettisoning all those minor league teams in the
Scouts.
Last year. I mean, it's just it's a travesty. I was not a fan of Bud Selig, but I gotta say I prefer the days of Bud to the days of Rob.
It's unbelievable. I mean, they're both awful. But this current deal here with the product, you flip it on, you can't even recognize some stuff inside the sport. I mean, it'd be like taking the NBA or the NHL and saying, okay, now we're in overtime and we're gonna go with the NBA. We're gonna count the 3-pointers are gonna be 4-pointers, and the NHL we're gonna have. We're going to. I mean, they do 3-on-3, which is really entertaining, but it's not that drastically different. It just opens up the ice more. But it's almost like, hey, we're going to put 2 pucks out there, and whoever scores first off, we're going to just drop a bag of pucks in the middle of the ice or whatever, and find the first one and go score. Yeah, it's just. I mean, it's not recognizable. How did you get into baseball? Take us back, and we'll close with this. Like, when you were a youngster, when did you first start into it? Did you have some favorite players, a team, etc.? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Okay.
That's where I spent my
Go Blue.
childhood. Yes, indeed. Spent a lot of Saturday afternoons at the Big House.
Awesome.
And
I got to get there, man.
Oh man, it was an incredible place to be a kid, especially in those days when the U of M football team was great, the baseball team was great,
Sure.
Basketball team was great.
Hockey's always good there too, really. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was never a huge hockey fan, but that was always they were really tops in all those sports. And so my first game was actually it was May 1976. Detroit Tigers at Tiger Stadium against the New York Yankees.
Wow.
And the first, I think the first player I saw hit a home run at a Major League Park was Roy White. And then the second player I saw hit a home run that day was Thurman Munson.
No kidding.
And so doing this book really kind of it felt like a full circle thing because even though I wasn't a Yankee fan per se, I grew up a Tigers fan. I really admired that '76 squad, and that seeing them that day was a big part of it. And seeing them that day was a big part of why Thurman was my favorite catcher. I would just saw him in action, saw him hit that home run, saw him. I knew he was supposed to be a great player, but then, it's like when you're a kid and you hear that somebody's great and then you go see them and they are great, mm-hmm. It just really reinforces it. And I wanted to be a catcher because of, watching Thurman that day. I was a terrible catcher in Little League, but I gave it a shot because of Thurman. So being able to do this book with Ron, was a total joy, a super fun experience, and to feel like I got to know Thurman better after all this time, and maybe got to share with the world a little more about who he actually was. It felt like a real full circle thing. And if you told me when I was 10 years old and watching him at that game that someday I would write a book about him, I wouldn't have believed you, but I would have been pretty stoked.
Yeah, the Tigers, by the way, goodness. I mean, what you think about what's happened to that franchise. I mean, it wasn't too long ago they were in World Series competing, winning pennants, and Verlander was on top of the baseball mountain, and Scherzer, and pulling all the big trades, and Dombrowski, and they get Cabrera and and now it's like they're unwatchable. I mean, they're brutal.
Yeah, I mean, and I knew going into the season. I mean, I was wearing I've got a Tigers throwback jacket that I was wearing, while working in the garden a couple months ago, and my neighbor was like, "Hey, the Tigers going to be any good this year?" And I just, without even looking at him, I just said no.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, nice 1984 Detroit Tigers throwback coat. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we'll never see those days.
That's it. Yeah, unbelievable. Final one for you.
Sure.
In the game today, I mean, we talked about what we really don't like and a little bit of what we do like. If you could make a change, and maybe and I'm tying it into kind of your childhood and when you started to love it, and obviously I think baseball was even better just even 5 to 7 years ago. It was better, but it was better 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Is there some change that you would make or something that you remember from your days growing up that you would implement in today's game to just make it better?
Well, other than bullpen carts, I don't know. It's I think at this point it's so far gone that you can't just pick one thing that would sort of flick the switch and pull things back to where it was. But I do think, I do think, well, I mean, again, back to the pace of play. I think if they would just reinforce, making the players, get back in the batter's box, or they're penalized with a strike, making the pitcher deliver within within 5 minutes of getting the ball. It just that there's just basic nuts and bolts stuff like that should have been implemented years ago, and now it's probably too late. But I would love to see that.
No doubt about it. Dan Epstein co-authored of the book The Captain and Me with Ron Blomberg. It's awesome stuff. Go get it. Major bookstores, Amazon.com. Online, of course, all platforms where books are sold. You can get Dan on Twitter at Big Hair Plasgrass as well, and BigHairPlasticGrass.com for some terrific writing. Go get all of Dan's books as well while we're at it. Again, The Captain and Me with Dan Epstein and Ron Blomberg. Go get it. Number 1, I believe, still on the Amazon list, right, Dan?
I haven't checked this morning, but it was this weekend, so that's pretty awesome. Thank you to everybody who's bought it.
No doubt. Well, hey, look, thank you so much. I've been a fan, obviously, for a long time, and Twitter can be a dark, dangerous place sometimes, but it's great because you can connect, and thank you for connecting with me, and anything down the line that comes out, I'd love to have you back.
Right on, Mike. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for supporting this book.
The ML Sports Platter brought to you by Stanley Law Offices, Liverpool Physical Therapy, our good friend Brian Conboy at Mass Mutual New York State, and Rosie's Corner. If you're in and around Central New York, it's pizza, wings, pasta, hot and cold subs, and more. Get in for Fish Friday as well. Rosie's Corner, a proud ML Sports Platter sponsor on Grubhub and available, of course, for delivery from Rosie's Direct. They've got your unbelievable garlic parm wings. I'm telling you, go try those. Go try the Gold Fever. Rosie's Corner, amazing place to be. Fish Friday, every Friday with a mac and cheese, coleslaw, and french fries. You can get mac and cheese, by the way, on Thursday and Friday at Rosie's Corner on Facebook, on Instagram. Jason, Jody, and the gang doing an awesome job at Rosie's Corner. Bartell Road exit in Brewerton, right on Route 11 in front of the Brewerton Bridge. Go see my friends at Rosie's Corner. Also, tip of the cap, thank you to the Swan and Whitaker families for their support of the platter as well. Hit me on Twitter at Mike L. Sports. Thanks again to Dan Epstein. And you can get this podcast on all the major platforms. Just hit that subscribe button and you'll get new and archived episodes of the ML Sports Platter wherever you get podcasts on your smartphone device. As I always tell you, enjoy the games.